Happy Sunday. This month, we focused on the Lord is my shepherd and the Lord is my fortress. And then last week, we flipped that, right? With you are the fortress for the Lord. You're the edifice that presents the Lord to the world, the throne room of the Lord, right? Well, similarly, this week, why don't we try to focus on you as the shepherd? At you as the person gathering in the flock, which by its nature is you as the evangelist. If we call ourselves Christians, then we've already taken the name of Christ on ourselves, right? So to avoid taking the Lord's name vainly, it behooves us to shepherd the faith and to gather the flock of which all humankind are members. I had a bishop years ago talking about, I believe it was the bishop's storehouse, but about the responsibility of the ward to its members. And he clarified that the ward wasn't just those people in the church, it was the boundaries of the area, and that everyone within those boundaries were people within the ward. They were people that the church was responsible for. So how do we shepherd this flock of Christ? How do we evangelize to the sheep that maybe don't know where they're going, right? The modern world is rather allergic to this concept, and with good reason. Religions are like toenails. We all have them, but nobody else wants you flicking yours in their general direction, right? Yeah. That makes sense. So approaching a little bit of a touchy topic. Why don't we do this in the spirit of YouTube and do 4 tips to evangelizing? Everybody loves a top 4 list. You're going to click on it. I think top 5 lists are actually better. I feel like odd numbers are better, but whatevs. So tip number 1. In Matthew 4:19, Jesus calls out to Peter and Andrew, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." That's a 2-part statement, right? Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. So let's flip it. And if we flip it, we get, how do you evangelize? By following Christ. Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. How do you become a fisher of man? You follow Christ. This is one of the easier ways to bring people to the faith while remaining on good terms with your friends and neighbors. Because most people don't like to be preached at, right? But your actions speak louder than words. And that's a fairly self-evident way of spreading the message of Christ, with wholesome actions that draw people in and show them what the faith is all about. Except, with all those wholesome actions, you kind of run the heavy risk of looking like Ned Flanders from The Simpsons, right? The goody two-shoes neighbor next door. And nobody wants to deal with a stupid Flanders. To follow Christ, then maybe we have to look at where he's going. Because I don't think he's going with Flanders necessarily, but stay with me. Or at least where he went. And what Christ did when he got there. So did Christ go to the church bake sale? You know what? He did, but then he flipped the tables once he got there, right? Like literally flipped the table. So he's maybe not a big fan of that activity, of church bake sale activity, I guess. Did he attend the temple on Sabbath? You know, our equivalent of going to church on Sunday? Oh, yeah, but he tended to kind of argue with the preachers, right? The Pharisees and Sadducees and all them dudes. And break the rules about what he was allowed to do in church, right? So Christ wasn't the best churchgoer either, in a sense. So where did Christ go? Well, in Matthew 9, there's this story. It reads, "Later, Matthew invited Jesus and his disciples to his home as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked Jesus' disciples, 'Why does your teacher eat with such scum?' When Jesus heard this, he said, healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do. Then Jesus added, now go and learn the meaning of this scripture. I want you to show mercy, not offer sacrifices. For I have come to call not those who think they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners. So following Christ is definitely not about being the most righteous person in the room. That's what we just heard. At least not in declaring oneself the most righteous person in the room, right? Christ didn't put on a suit and tie and white-collared shirt and everything and go hang out with everyone else who had already been saved. Christ hung out with the sinners. But how does that help us with evangelizing? Now, I can't speak with authority on the subject necessarily about evangelizing, but what I can say is that I'm not a very righteous person. That part I can speak with authority on. Before we were all stuck in our houses permanently, before we were all just like, can't go anywhere, I hung around bars and clubs and, places all the time. And most of them were not like suitable for your family-friendly Minecraft server, right? They were kind of little shady places, and some of them were super shady places. And people who came to know me in those places that I frequented were sometimes surprised to hear of my faith when it would naturally kind of come up in a conversation. One friend said about an acquaintance of ours who knows that side of me and some of the haunts I frequent. My friend said, when I told him you were a Mormon, he said, how does Aaron square that round peg? It's true. They seem very separate. I am a middle-aged, middle-class, often well-spoken white man. Well-spoken, we'll see. But so I can clean up enough to fake my way through a priesthood meeting. But that's not where I am most of the time. And I'm no saint. I'm a seeker. Just looking for ways to follow my Lord better every day. The thing is, when you stumble ahead towards a goal in the dark with just one eye open, others will latch on to you. The others that got both eyes, right? In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Because you seem like maybe you know where you're going. Maybe you do. Or maybe at least you can see a little better. And so maybe you can help shepherd those other lost lambs along with you toward home. Just by being there with them and walking the path that you're called to walk. So tip 2. In Acts 1:8, Jesus declares, you will be my witness in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. Learning some pieces of scripture like we talked about a couple of weeks ago during the Lord is my shepherd message has a twofold effect. Absorbing scripture like the 23rd Psalm and fusing it into your soul is an enriching and nourishing experience for oneself. You plant this beautiful seed of faith and wisdom that sprouts in you and years later might serve you well in times of spiritual famine. But the thing with crops you grow is that they don't have to just feed you, right? I mean, there's some farmers out there that just grow the crops just for themselves, I guess, but I think a lot of them, they feed the family, they feed the community, they sell them, right? Sharing your bounty from the gospel is a blessing, and it's fun in a way, too. And that can be pretty literally in terms of sharing. This one is a slippery slope, I admit. We all know, because sharing like this, spouting gospel can be a little bit of a slippery slope, or scripture, I should say. Because we all know a Bible thumper, or we probably all know about 10,000 Bible thumpers, But we all know at least one Bible thumper who has an out of context Bible verse on their tongue for absolutely every point that they want to make, or even more, every point they want to win in a conversation, right? And pretty much all those scriptures they know out of context and just have rolling off their tongue, they're pretty much all focused on one topic, and that's how you suck, right? Or how you're wrong. So I'm definitely not recommending joining that crowd of people that have scripture on their tongue and in their minds. But holding a scripture in your heart and making it a part of you is a little different than holding a compendium of rules. So it kind of makes me think of Star Wars, of all things. A lot of us like Star Wars, right? It's one of the most popular film franchises of all time, so the likelihood's better that you do like Star Wars, at least on some level, than that you don't. But then there's those dogmatic acolytes among Star Wars fans, and they can tell you the lithium-ion specifications of every hyperwarp drive on every space shuttle ship and the vast catalog of canonical and non-canonical works about Star Wars out there, right? They can tell you what the name of Qui-Gon Jinn's third grade teacher was and list for you every planet in the Kyber region. But that's probably not how most of us relate to Star Wars. At least not how a lot of us relate to Star Wars. As a Star Wars fan who loses most trivia nights, Star Wars trivia nights, I can tell you how I relate to Star Wars. I relate to it as a story that taught me some things about right and wrong and inspired me to be a better person. And when I rewatch, especially the first film, which is my favorite, the original, later called New Hope, I reconnect to lessons about morality and doing what's right that are buried very deep in my being. That's a scripture for me in a way, and it's buried way into me, and it's blossomed so long ago that it's just part of me, and it has nothing to do with what the various things on Luke's moisture farm do or any of that technicalities, right? So what if we approach the scripture in that same kind of way and then share it that way? Because when you talk to somebody, they don't want to hear a list of all the headmasters of the Jedi Council spewed at them, right? They don't want you to do that. But telling them about how Yoda raised that X-Wing out of the swamp despite his small size. Judge me by my size, do you? Right? That's interesting and exciting. And we can share the gospel better if we enjoy it and spread that enjoyment rather than cataloging it and beating people over the head with stats and obscure trivia, right? So tip number 3. In Isaiah 55:11, God declares, "So is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it." I don't know of any shepherds who lead with a leash, right? Do you? I'm not exactly a shepherd in the literal sense. In fact, I don't even know if I've ever seen a flock of sheep being herded in real life, only in movies. But in the movies, the shepherd never uses a leash. I've never seen that, and I don't think that's how it works. He lets the sheep go out, right? And move along his purpose with some autonomy. It can be hard when we want something good for someone, or have a vested interest in this person or like them, to let go of our efforts and allow those efforts to work of their own accord, right? And to let the person work through these things of their own accord. But part of being a good evangelist and a good shepherd is remembering that you can only show the sheeps the boundaries and call them on to the next field, right? Side note, I just like saying sheeps, it's more fun. Shepherds don't tie ropes around their sheep's neck and drag them across the land. They offer direction and inspiration. And then they go off in search of the lost sheep who wander a little too far. But they allow some wandering. Being a good shepherd means herding, not controlling. There is a difference. People find the path to God's love in their own time and their own ways. Just be there to give them a nudge or a call of encouragement when they need it. And you'll be a far better shepherd than if you try to drag them by their necks. Tip number 4, our last and final tip. We'll start this one by quoting from a completely different scripture than we've approached so far. We've mostly been sticking with the Bible. Now, knowing me, you're probably thinking, oh, here comes the Book of Mormon, and as well you should, because the Book of Mormon is one of my favorite scriptures. But, in fact, we're going to switch to a completely different one. So there's a scene in Wayne's World where Wayne is lamenting the loss of his girlfriend, Cassandra. Garth, Wayne's stalwart companion, says, I think you should just go get Cassandra. To which Wayne replies, I just don't think she wants me to. Garth knowingly fills Wayne in on a little secret he's recently found out. Garth says, let me tell you a little something I've learned about women. They want you to come get them. They love it. Sheep don't want to wander alone in the fields without that support or help. They live in a herd, and they want to be in their herd. And they want to be in the safety and delight of rich fields with their brothers and their sisters. Often, as Christians, we think that those around us don't want religion or Christ. But faith and spirituality are a natural part of the human experience. I do believe that's true. You know, there's like studies that apes even have primitive forms of worship and things. It's a side note. People need God in their lives. We were made to live in the presence of God. Questions about who God is and how we can best help her are as natural as anything else human. People without faith aren't necessarily against you helping to shepherd them along the journey. In fact, they might just want you to come and get them. I hope you have a blessed week and that you're having a wonderful Sunday. God bless.